There was certainly an element of making my grandfather proud and honouring him by taking part in the award that has been so much of his life's work. And I definitely hope that I have made him proud.
What if Queen Elizabeth's most powerful message wasn't delivered in a speech or at a public event, but from within a private will, where she passed something deeply personal to a young woman instead of a senior, royal, the future king, or even the wife of her own son? That young woman is Lady Louise Windsor, who inherited a cottage on the Balmoral estate, Queen Elizabeth's most cherished retreat. It was her personal place to escape, and the very place she passed away in September 2022. Recent news even shows Prince William took action to secure this specific inheritance. Interestingly, Camilla, the Queen Consort, had absolutely no involvement in this decision. Today, we're breaking down what happened, why it matters, and what the Queen's choice really says about the royal family. This isn't just a story about property. It gives us a rare glimpse into the dynamics of one of the world's most talked about families. Let's get right into it, what Lady Louise inherited and why it's a much bigger deal than it sounds. First, let's start with the basics. Before we can truly grasp why this inheritance is so important, you need to understand Balmoral. Balmoral Castle is in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, set within 50,000 acres of wilderness, moorland and forests. This is so much more than just another property for the British monarchy. It serves as their private refuge. Every summer the royal family heads there to escape the public glare and the duties of royal life. At Balmoral, they can simply be a family. But here's an important detail many people don't realise: Balmoral is not owned by the state. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert purchased it privately in 1852 with their own funds, and it has been the monarch's personal property ever since. This means that Queen Elizabeth owned Balmoral herself and could leave it, or parts of it, to absolutely anyone she wanted. And she chose Louise. She inherited a cottage located within the Balmoral grounds. And while the name of the cottage has not been publicly revealed, the estate has several homes, including Craigwan Lodge, Witch Queen. Elizabeth frequently used and smaller houses for relatives and guests. Receiving one of these properties is far more than just a simple gift. It grants you a special place in the royal family's most intimate setting. Consider this. You wouldn't give away a piece of your most beloved home unless that person meant the world to you. Queen. Elizabeth had plenty of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, not to mention senior royals all around her. She even had a new queen consort, and yet she picked Louise. A royal's private will often shows their true feelings. It isn't guided by politics or public relations. It reveals their genuine intentions. This is where the story truly begins, and it only gets more compelling from here. So who is Lady Louise Windsor, and why did the Queen love her so dearly? If you're not a big royal watcher, you may not know a lot about Lady Louise. She has purposely kept a low profile, which is one of the main reasons Queen Elizabeth appreciated her so much. Louise Alice Elizabeth Mary Mountbatten Windsor was born on November 8, 2003, a full 8 weeks early. Her birth was a sudden emergency delivery by caesarean section at Frimley Park Hospital in Surrey. Due to severe complications, royal aides only confirmed her birth hours later, once they were sure that she and her mother Sophie were both safe. Louise weighed just 4 pounds at birth, and within her first year she had surgery for esotropia, a condition which makes one eye turn inward. This was definitely not a typical fairy tale royal beginning. Her parents are Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. Edward is King Charles's youngest brother, and he and Sophie are known for being the most down-to-earth and private of the royal siblings, putting more focus on family than on public life. Louise was raised in this very environment. When she had the option to use her royal title and be styled as Her Royal Highness Princess Louise, she chose to simply be Lady Louise instead. She wanted to live as much as possible like a normal person. She doesn't have official social media accounts or chase media attention. She studies, rides horses and drives carriages, leading a life that is remarkably ordinary for a member of the royal family. Prince Philip adored her for this. The Duke of Edinburgh was known for being rather gruff and private, but he had a very special bond with Louise. He personally taught her how to drive a carriage, which was a hobby he cherished in his later years. After Philip died in April 2021, many people were deeply moved by the sight of a 17-year-old Louise dressed in black driving his carriage during his tribute. She did this to honour the man who taught her and to carry on his unique passion. Louise drove his carriage so that it would not be left sitting empty. That single moment perfectly captured who she is, and Queen Elizabeth saw all of it. She saw how Louise supported Philip and maintained her own privacy and dignity in a family where those qualities were often missing. But Elizabeth watched her grow into a young woman who truly reflected the values she had always upheld. So it makes perfect sense Elizabeth left her something special. Now Prince William gets involved. Here's what that actually means, and we'll explain exactly why. Prince William, the current Prince of Wales and the future King of England, took a very surprising step to help ensure Louise's inheritance was truly honoured. His involvement needs a bit of explanation because it's not totally obvious why. Clear why William needed to act. You see, after Queen Elizabeth died, the entire Balmoral estate legally went to King Charles, who now owns it. Now owns it all. That means any property on that estate falls under his direct control. For Louise to actually inherit the cottage, the family's senior members had to fully support it. And William didn't just offer passive approval. Sources report that he actively worked hard to make sure that Louise's inheritance was respected and everything went off without a hitch. And in a family known for complicated relationships and a lack of trust, William's backing of Louise is incredibly significant. So the question is why? William prioritised this. Well, the answer makes perfect sense when you stop and think about it. He's seen exactly how young royals can feel completely unsupported by the firm. He personally watched his own brother Harry go from a beloved family member to living in California and talking about feeling totally abandoned by everyone. Whether you agree with Harry's choices or not, William clearly learned a valuable lesson from that whole situation. He now seems to believe that the royals who follow the rules by staying private and dutifully serving the family, without seeking the spotlight, deserve the monarchy's backing, and Louise is following this path perfectly. She's not writing any memoirs or giving splashy interviews. She is simply focusing on her studies and was right there for Philip when it mattered most. By supporting Louise William is sending a clear message the institution sees and deeply honours her commitment. In any family, whenever someone steps up to protect one of the quieter members, it really reveals their character. And William's actions here reflect the type of king he ultimately hopes to become. This involvement also strongly suggests who he values in his own inner circle, and it is very notable that Camilla is not part of it, which brings us to a more sensitive element of this story. Camilla was left out, and the complicated truth behind Queen Elizabeth's feelings. First, let's clarify something right away about Camilla. Parker Bowles, now Queen Camilla, holds a truly significant amount of power. As the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, she stands right beside King Charles at every single state event. She officially represents the royal family and has full access to all official royal residences and is deeply involved in all the monarchy's activities. So when we say Camilla was left out of the inheritance story, we mean it in a much deeper, more personal sense. We're talking about her private feelings. She has not publicly shared her inner thoughts publicly. Instead, the late Queen left behind a will and a lifetime of very careful choices. To understand what Queen Elizabeth's decision really meant, we have to examine the complicated history behind it. The story of Charles and Camilla's relationship began in the early 1970s, before Charles married a young Diana Spencer in 1981, and their relationship continued throughout his marriage to Diana, a fact that both Charles and Camilla would later publicly confirm. The impact of that Affair on Diana and the royal family was enormous. Diana's now famous 1995 interview, where she famously mentioned that there were 3 people in her marriage, was watched by more than 20 million viewers in the UK alone. The aftermath absolutely changed how people viewed Charles, Camilla, and the monarchy itself. Queen Elizabeth deeply valued loyalty. She personally witnessed Diana's pain and her son's incredibly public marriage troubles, and Elizabeth certainly saw Camilla's role in that entire messy situation. Despite Elizabeth's public statements, her private feelings were known to be different. When Charles and Camilla married in a civil ceremony on April 9, 2005, Queen Elizabeth was notably absent. The official reason given was that she was attending a reception for the couple later on that day at Windsor Castle, but everyone noticed that the Queen, his own mother, was absent from her son's wedding. Then there was the whole issue of the title. Initially, when Charles became king, there was a formal plan to refer to Camilla as Princess Consort. This lesser title had absolutely no historical precedent and was specifically designed, intended to soften public reaction to the idea of making Camilla the new queen. After some private discussions reportedly happened between Elizabeth and Charles, they decided that Camilla would be queen consort. While Elizabeth agreed to this, the official announcement was very quietly made during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations in February 2022, tucked into a statement, reaffirming Elizabeth's own succession wishes. A monarch who fully supported Camilla wouldn't have needed to go through negotiate these terms so carefully. The negotiations themselves tell us the real truth. So when Elizabeth's will specified that a cherished, special item from her personal estate would go to Louise and not to Camilla or the other senior royals, we honestly shouldn't be surprised. This was Queen Elizabeth expressing her true feelings privately and honestly. So what do royal wills actually tell us? It's about reading between the legal lines. But before we continue, we need to address something head-on, because credibility is everything in a story like this. In the United Kingdom, royal wills are sealed completely and are unavailable to the public. For instance, in 2021, the High Court ruled that Prince Philip's will must stay private for at least 90 years after his passing. This very same rule applies to Queen Elizabeth's will, and senior royals can request for their own wills to be sealed, protecting the royal family's privacy, and these requests are almost always approved. So then how do we know what's in it? The short answer is we don't know it all. What we do know comes from solid royal reporting by sources inside the family who spoke to journalists anonymously, and it also comes from Queen Elizabeth's own very public behaviour, which always reflected her private values. Royal historians have pointed out that the Queen showed her feelings about people through her actions, not with her words. This included who she invited to Balmoral, who she was photographed with, who she trusted with public roles, and just as importantly, who she excluded from her personal warmth. In her final years, she consistently included Edward and Sophie's family, while Harry and Meghan found themselves much less involved. Camilla had a tricky mix of acceptance and distance, officially recognised but never fully embraced. Sophie Louise's mother became one of Elizabeth's closest female confidants near the end of her life. After Harry and Meghan stepped down in 2020, Sophie and Edward took on many more public roles and often accompanied the Queen to events that other senior royals would have otherwise attended. Elizabeth showed her appreciation by giving Sophie a personal brooch that had belonged to her, and royal experts saw this gesture as a sign of incredibly deep affection, and Louise was a core part of that family. She supported Philip, drove his carriage, and never sold stories or granted interviews for personal attention. In Elizabeth's world, which was built on discretion duty and absolute loyalty, Louise was pretty much the ideal grandchild. The will is going to stay sealed, but Elizabeth spent 70 years showing everyone her values. All we ever had to do was pay attention. Interpreting these royal actions as a reflection of private feelings isn't just guesswork. It's the primary way the royal family actually communicates. Once you learn their language, the real message is obvious. And the bigger picture, a royal power shift that nobody is openly talking about. So let's take a step back. This whole story about a cottage and an inheritance is just one small piece of something much larger happening inside the British monarchy. Seeing this wider context helps clarify everything we've discussed. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace announced King Charles III had been diagnosed with cancer. Following treatment for his prostate, the palace did not reveal what kind of cancer he has. While he continues to perform his duties, his schedule is being very carefully managed and he's had clear breaks from public appearances during his treatment. As a direct result, William, the Prince of Wales and heir to the throne, has stepped up in a big way. He isn't just preparing for his future role, he is actively handling many of the reigning kings, duties that Charles can no longer perform. In essence, William is already doing much of the king's job while Charles is still alive. William is also making very clear choices about who he trusts and includes in his tight inner circle. Edward and Sophie, the new Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, are taking on more and more responsibilities. They're being positioned as absolutely key figures in the monarchy's future. And their daughter, Louise, is also being brought into this trusted circle. In sharp contrast, other family members are being sidelined. Prince Andrew lost his royal duties following his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein and a disastrous BBC interview. He now has no royal role whatsoever. Prince Harry lives in California and has exposed details of his family life in his memoir. He doesn't seem to have a way back into the royal fold. These men are not part of William's focus. The monarchy is putting distance between itself and them. Camilla, despite being the Queen, is not fully integrated into the close-knit family unit that William is now building. She's Charles's partner, but is not seen as part of the family circle that Elizabeth created, which William is now inheriting. Every monarchy has a formal structure and an emotional structure, and they don't always match. Right now, that emotional structure of the British royal family is shifting, and Louise is a key part of this change. The Balmoral cottage is more than just a property. It symbolises a place within an inner circle that is becoming increasingly exclusive. Queen Elizabeth initiated this change by pulling out the chair for Louise. So where this goes from here for Louise, William, Camilla, and the future of the crown is the big question. Lady Louise Windsor is 21 years old, studying English at the University of St. Andrews, the very same university where William and Kate first met. She gets to decide how she'll shape her own future as a member of this royal family. She faces a major choice. She can protect her privacy and live outside the spotlight, just like some other royals have done, or she could step up to perform royal duties, helping support the monarchy as it transforms under King Charles. With Andrew and Harry out of the picture, the royal family desperately needs more working members, and William would welcome her support. William is destined to be king, but it's anyone's guess when and who he trusts will need to be by his side, while other family relationships might just drift further apart. Camilla's role gets complicated as she shifts from queen consort to Queen Dowager when William finally takes the throne. If she and William aren't close, this new position could be an incredibly lonely one for her. At the same time, Balmoral is facing money trouble as Charles slashes costs. But the one cottage Queen Elizabeth left to Louise is totally safe, a symbol of their incredibly strong connection. The Queen's reign saw immense world changes and private struggles which clearly shaped the message of love she left in her will. She made sure to give Louise a cottage in Scotland, proving exactly what she valued most. So, what do you believe Queen Elizabeth's final message to her family really was? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more secrets from inside the palace.